What's up, guys, and welcome back to a Market Watch Wednesday here with the InkCast. And today we're going to be looking at something a little different. There's not too many cards that went up or down, and yes, we'll look at a few, but we're going to be diving into the cards that are moving that may give us some information about the upcoming DLC that's happening this weekend. So with that, let's jump into the cards. All right, so looking at some of the cards that are going up, we have Cinderella Ballroom Sensation. She is currently $4.25, and this is an upswing of about 8%. So, 37 cents or something like that for the last 7 days. The reason why I'm really looking at this card is definitely one of those cards that shows a Steel Song is on the move. So when we think of DLC, like we mentioned coming up, this is one of those cards that's going to let us know that we're probably going to be seeing quite a bit of Steel Song in these DLCs. So just be prepared for that one. The next card is Sisu Responsible Sister. And this is the big Sisu. And this card's probably the biggest mover this week. Right now, this card is $19.82. And that is a 17% increase over the last 7 days. So almost $3.50 movement. This really shows us this card has a lot of interest. A lot of people are looking at it. Yes, we know there's a one-of copy in Kindle's purple red list, but also this card's being used more and more in blue red. So Sapphire, Ruby, Control is using this more so than Be Prepared. And so you want to really watch out for that deck. The fact that this card has moved so much over the last week or so, it really points to the fact that we'll be seeing a lot of this at the DLCs. And yeah, it's kind of what I expected. It's been doing pretty well in the last few tournaments. And so it makes sense that people are looking at this card, buying up this card, getting their play sets. Again, in the Sapphire Ruby, this is a 4-of in the list. And this is the reason why this card's moving so much. Another card kind of tied to that particular list is Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. This card is $24.19. And that's a little bit of a move, but because it's already so expensive, the percentage that has gone up is already at $2.33. So again, with it already being a pricey card, it's a legendary from set 1, getting harder to find and things like that. Any movement on this card is definitely going to make a difference when it comes to price. So this card's also going up like we saw Sisu because of that Sapphire Ruby list that's floating around that I think a lot of people are going to be looking at for this weekend. And speaking of Sapphire decks in general, Lucky Dime is also going up. The Lucky Dime is $12.43. That is an increase of $1. So 8%, a little over 8% over the last 7 days. And it is going up. So again, we were seeing this card being a 2-of in a lot of decks. We're starting to see some people run 3-of in the decks. So it is driving that price up just a little bit. So something to keep an eye on. And like I mentioned, DLC, of course, we're going to see our staple decks showing up, but all these cards that we just talked about really makes me feel like we're going to see way more Sapphire Ruby than we really thought of at the beginning. All right, so another card to keep a lookout on is Ursula Sea Witch Queen. This card is $7.76, and that is a 22% increase over the last 7 days. So up $1.73. Again, not a huge number, but when you look at that percentage, that 22%, this really means a lot. Now, this is one of those cards that makes perfect sense. We're seeing a big rise in the Emerald Amethyst Tempo deck. That deck runs 2 or 3 copies of this card. Again, shifting on your little 2-drop Ursula, shutting down Steel Song and things like that. So this card is definitely one to keep your eye on. It does have multiple printing. So if you're looking at this from an investment perspective or anything like that, probably not necessarily one that's going to be huge in the investment just because you have a normal, a foil, an enchanted, and the set championship version last set championships. But it is one of those cards that's showing us that that particular deck is also on the rise. We've also seen potentially this being in some of the Amethyst Steel decks as a 1 or 2-of at your high end, but not having the shift target definitely hurts. But I believe this is specifically because of the Emerald Amethyst. Again, shout out to Earlmeister with that list. And I expect to see this list show up, maybe hitting top 8, but definitely having a handful of these make day 2. The next two cards we're looking at kind of tie in together with the Under the Sea deck, but we had the Muses, again, only 64 cents, not too expensive, but that is a 25% increase over the last 7 days. So again, a lot of people picking these up. And this also carries over to Kidda, who is also going up. So $10, and this has gone up almost 10%. So almost another $1 over the last 7 days. Again, the deck looks really good, and a lot of people are focusing on that particular deck for this weekend and the DLCs. The last card going up that we're going to be looking at is Pinocchio Star Attraction. And yeah, this card, it's kind of come and go. It's at $2.36. That is almost a 20% increase over the last 7 days. Again, the hyper aggro decks, a lot of people are going to be picking up this deck to go to these events or even set championships next, week, or I guess next month as they start. Just a lot of people looking at these decks, wanting to have something easy to play, something that you can just play, tap, gain lore, all the good stuff. So we're definitely seeing this card also on the rise. All right, so moving over to the cards that are going down, we've just got a couple cards to look at here. Again, a lot of stuff is just stabilizing in general, especially when it comes to set 5, and Anna is one of those cards. This is one of those cards that looks really, really good on paper, but when you figure in the tax that you're having to pay every time you play her, yeah, she's not being as versatile as we thought she would be, or at least for now. This card is $4.64, and that is a 30% decrease over the last 7 days. So again, a pretty big drop here, over $1.50 of a drop. So you want to keep your eye here. This could continue to go down, even though I know Meister did put one of these in his deck. So if the deck does really well, we may have people picking them up, and it could go up a couple dollars. But just keep in mind, this is one of those cards. It's a fringe play card. It's not a 4 of index. So, don't really know exactly where it'll go, but it is a cheap legendary, something to keep your eye on. So the next card is Daisy Duck Donald's Date. We've talked about this card several weeks in a row, continuing to kind of level off at this point. So she is $8.34. Again, 33% drop in the last 7 days. It's just trying to get to that, point that it's going to land at. I predicted this card really being that $8 card, that $7 card, somewhere around in there. And I really do feel that this is where this card's going to land. It's played in a lot of decks. It is a 4 of in those amber decks. So she's not going to go way too low. I mean, the very bottom price of this card is $5, but realistically, again, I think she's going to be about $7 or $8, which is where she's at now. If you haven't picked them up, this is a good time to pick them up. I don't really see them going up much higher than that because she's not legendary. And again, there's a lot of printing of the set, so the card's pretty readily available. So another legendary card here that's just kind of starting to come back down because she did get a little bit of a spike is the Queen Diviner. This card is $7.12. That is almost 20% drop in the last 7 days. Again, one of those cards, it's a great card, has some potential when it comes to an item deck into the next set. So you do want to keep your eye on her. But with Oswald being there and Oswald being spoiled as the legendary for next set, there's a potential that him plus hero is all you need. And the Diviner may or may not be exactly the card you're looking for. So again, it had a little bit of a spike with some of the spoilers that came out, but I think now that hype is starting to die down when people remembered Oswald is a card in the next set. And the last card for the going downs that we're looking at is Madam Mim Elephant. This is one of those cards a lot of people looked at. They wanted to play around with her, but we're just realizing she's not as good as she looks. Again, she can be a 1 of or 2 of in some of these, Amethyst Steel decks or something like that. But I think the call usually is actually just going with Belle over Madam Mim Elephant. So this card is $1.14, and that is a 44% drop over the last 7 days. So again, really big drop there, just continuing to go down. Yeah, this card's gonna be $1 or less, just like what a lot of cards are in Lorcana. So you just want to keep your eye on it. If you want to pick them up or you need to complete your set for set 5, it may be close to the time to pick them up because they are pretty much around the bottom that this card's going to be. So again, one of those cards that looks fun, looks like it may be useful, but realistically, Belle from the other set's going to be just a better card in that slot. All right, and so lastly, we're looking at those best sellers. Thanks to Card Market and the data that they have, And yeah, we're seeing some good cards. We got Elsa, the Fifth Spirit, still in that #1 spot. A lot of people picking this card up for, whether it's the Tempo decks or, Amethyst Steel or any of the different Amethyst decks that you may want to try to run her in. I'm still not super high on this card. I think she works when she works in a few different matchups, but there's just a lot of time where, there's things or better things that you can be doing on 5 in that slot. So I don't know. Maybe specifically with the Emerald Amethyst Tempo deck, she's really good. But outside of that, I don't know. I don't agree with the hype on the card. Again, I could be totally wrong, and we'll see after this weekend. But it's just one of those cards where she's okay, but she's not as good as some of the other cards that are out there. Bonsai coming in as the second one. Again, just really showing us this Amethyst Emerald deck is super tempo. And again, this is something to note specifically for the DLC coming up, and especially for the Europe DLC, since Card Market is the European market to buy cards. That may be one of the top decks you're going to be seeing coming into DLC this weekend. Now, Cusco is a very interesting card here. I think I underrated this card when I first saw him, but the more I played against him, the versatility he has for removing things on the board is actually really good. So we're seeing him pop up a lot more in the Ruby Sapphire decks or the Sapphire Steel decks. And so this is a card you really want to keep your eye on because it's probably going to make a big splash this upcoming weekend at some of these DLCs. For the rest of the top 10, you got some really good cards in here. We got Library popping up again. A lot of us are realizing Library is almost, if not better, than Queen's Castle in a lot of games. So you're going to be seeing that a lot more. So you need to be aware of how to play against it. You've got Pete. Again, the game's referee, just stopping all those actions, all those songs. We're seeing that more and more in a bunch of the different builds. So something to look at. And again, not going to be a super valuable card. He's in the starter decks, multiple copies there. He's not, super rare or legendary or anything like that, but he is one of those cards a lot of people picking up. So if you're on Steel Song and things like that, you need to be aware playing against another Steel deck when Pete may come down. Rest of the cards, nothing too much. We've talked about a lot of the cards on this list, but just be aware that there's a lot of decks floating around, and these could give you some tips on what to expect to see this upcoming weekend. So that is the Market Watch for this week, guys. Let me know down below in the comments, what are you guys looking forward to with the DLC this weekend? What do you think is going to be the top deck taking down, whether it's the European one or the North America one? What deck, what 2 colors are going to be the champs over the weekend? And we will check in and see next week what these prices do once we have our top 8, once we have our winners and things like that, because I have a feeling the market is going to go crazy next week once we figure out what is the quote unquote top deck for the set. Again, appreciate all you guys for supporting the channel. If you haven't already done it, hit that sub button, hit the like button, hit the bell for all the videos coming out. Until next time, I'll take it easy.